If you're a man over 60 and your doctor has simply told you to eat more vegetables, I need you to pause right now and really hear this. Because one of those vegetables sitting in your kitchen at this very moment could be quietly working against your hormonal health, your prostate, and your daily energy. This isn't about getting older. This is about what you've been putting on your plate, believing it was helping, when the science tells a very different story. My name is Dr. Laura, and I've spent the last 13 years specializing exclusively in men's health and hormonal wellness. I work with men in their 60s, 70s, and 80s every single day, helping them rebuild their vitality, their strength, and their confidence through targeted nutrition. And one pattern I see repeatedly is that some of the most well-intentioned dietary choices are the very ones silently undermining men's health at the hormonal and circulatory level. Here's what most people don't realize. Certain vegetables, ones routinely labeled as heart-healthy and nutritious, carry hidden compounds that raise estrogen, reduce nitric oxide availability, stiffen arterial walls, and promote prostate inflammation. The same foods your well-meaning physician may have recommended could be pushing your body in the wrong direction. That's not a conspiracy. That's biochemistry. In this video, I'm going to walk you through 4 vegetables you should seriously reconsider after 60 if you care about circulation, hormonal balance, prostate health, and sustained physical confidence. Then I'll show you 4 powerful alternatives that can genuinely restore what time and poor dietary habits have taken. Stay with me until the end, because I'll reveal one widely consumed green vegetable that studies show can elevate estrogen levels in men over 60 by more than 30%, and almost no one is warning you about it. Before we get into the specifics, hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss content built specifically to keep men over 60 strong, sharp, and thriving. And drop a 1 in the comments if this kind of content is useful to you, or a 0 if it's not. I genuinely read your feedback and use it to improve every video. Alright, let's get into it. 4 vegetables to reconsider. After 60, these are foods that may appear healthy on the surface but can quietly disrupt your hormonal balance, restrict circulation, promote inflammation, and drain your physical vitality when your body needs the opposite. Soybeans, edamame, tofu, soy milk. Let me tell you about one of my patients. His name was Robert, 68 years old, a retired school principal, mentally sharp, deeply in love with his wife. But something had shifted. He came in feeling unlike himself, persistently fatigued, low energy, and a quiet loss of the physical drive and confidence he'd always had. Everything seems fine, he told me, but the fire is just gone. We ran a full panel. His cardiovascular markers were reasonable, cholesterol slightly elevated, but one number stood out immediately. His estrogen levels were unusually high for a man his age. So I asked about his diet. Robert lit up. He'd made what he thought was a smart switch a few years prior. Tofu stir-fries, soy milk in his coffee, edamame as a snack. I read it was heart-healthy, he said. And that's when it became clear. Soybeans are loaded with phytoestrogens, plant-based compounds that chemically mimic estrogen in the male body. For a younger man, that may be a minor concern. But for a man over 60, whose testosterone is already in natural decline, introducing regular estrogen-mimicking compounds into the diet tips the hormonal scale further in the wrong direction. The real-world consequences of this imbalance include reduced physical drive, slower post-exercise recovery, decreased lean muscle maintenance, and a gradual erosion of vascular responsiveness throughout the body, including in regions critical to a man's intimate wellness. I've seen this pattern dozens of times. What makes this worse is how invisible soy is in the modern food supply. It's embedded in protein bars, salad dressings, plant-based meat alternatives, packaged snacks, and hundreds of processed foods. The food industry relies on soy because it's cheap, versatile, and wears the healthy label proudly. But your male hormones don't read marketing copy. Beyond hormonal disruption, some research also links high soy consumption to increased systemic inflammation and thyroid interference in older adults, a combination that compounds the age-related decline in circulation and nerve sensitivity. We removed the soy from Robert's diet. Within weeks, his energy returned. Within a month, The hormonal picture had improved. His wife sent a handwritten note to my office. It read, "You gave me my husband back. I'm not calling soy poison. In moderation, for most people it's fine. But for men over 60 dealing with fatigue, hormonal decline, or prostate concerns, it's a food worth replacing with something better." Pickled or canned beets. One of my patients, Harold, 72, came in looking genuinely confused. "Dr. Laura," he said, "I've been doing everything right. I eat beets almost every day because I read they're fantastic for blood flow. But my legs still feel cold. And honestly, nothing seems to be improving in the way I hoped." That last part came out quietly, the way it often does when a man is talking about something deeply personal. I smiled and asked one question. "Harold, are you eating them fresh or from a can?" He paused. "Canned. Pickled sometimes too. It's just easier." And there it was. In their natural state, beets are one of the most potent vasodilatory foods available. They're rich in dietary nitrates, which the body converts into nitric oxide, a molecule that relaxes and dilates blood vessels, improving oxygen delivery to muscles, the brain, and the entire pelvic vascular network. For men over 60, this translates directly to physical endurance, mental sharpness, and healthy circulatory function throughout the body. But when beets are canned or pickled, the process dismantles that benefit entirely. High-temperature canning degrades a substantial portion of the active nitrates. The brining process used in pickling loads the product with sodium and acidic compounds that actively constrict arterial walls, doing the precise opposite of what you're trying to achieve. Harold thought he was feeding his circulation. In reality, he was chronically restricting it. I found he was consuming nearly double the recommended daily sodium intake, most of it coming from those healthy pickled vegetables. That level of sodium reduces nitric oxide bioavailability and can directly contribute to declining vascular performance in older men. We made one change: fresh roasted beets, seasoned lightly with olive oil and sea salt. That's it. Within 2 weeks, Harold's hands and feet were noticeably warmer. His morning walks extended. And within a month, his confidence in areas he'd quietly stopped expecting improvement had returned, without a prescription. The lesson here isn't that beets are bad. It's that processing changes everything. What starts as medicine becomes something else entirely in the wrong form. Before you reach for a can, ask yourself whether that convenience is helping your blood vessels or quietly narrowing them. Nightshade vegetables, especially eggplant. I'll never forget Frank, a 75-year-old retired contractor, tough in the way that only decades of physical work can make a man. He came in for routine blood work, but the conversation turned personal quickly. "My knees ache constantly," he said. "My back is stiff, and honestly, I've lost all sensation in certain areas. Not pain, just nothing, like someone turned off a switch." His labs showed nothing alarming. He was active, walked daily, and ate what he described as a colorful, vegetable-forward diet. Grilled vegetables every evening, Mediterranean style. Then I asked him to walk me through a typical day's meals. One word stood out: eggplant. "I have it almost every night," he said. "My wife bakes it with tomato and herbs." Eggplant belongs to the nightshade family, a plant group that includes tomatoes, peppers, and white potatoes. These vegetables contain natural compounds called alkaloids, and while they're harmless in small amounts for most people, they can trigger low-grade inflammatory responses in older adults, particularly in the joints and peripheral nervous system. For a man like Frank, who already had mild circulatory strain and age-related nerve sensitivity, that low-grade inflammation was compounding into something significant. The loss of sensation he described wasn't purely vascular, it was neurological. Alkaloid-induced nerve irritation can impair signaling pathways throughout the body, including those that govern sensation in the pelvic floor and lower extremities. Think of your nervous system as electrical wiring. If the insulation is inflamed or degraded, signals become inconsistent, even when the power source is intact. That was Frank's situation. Once we reduced his eggplant intake and pulled back on other high-alkaloid nightshades, the changes came quickly. The tingling in his legs faded, his joints felt more mobile, and a few weeks later, He leaned toward me in the exam room and said quietly, "Doc, I can feel things again. I'm not suggesting every man over 60 needs to eliminate every tomato or pepper, but if you're dealing with chronic joint stiffness, pelvic discomfort, or unexplained numbness alongside declining physical vitality, it's worth taking a serious look at your nightshade intake. Inflammation doesn't always announce itself as swelling. Sometimes it arrives as silence." Overcooked or microwaved cruciferous vegetables. Walter, 69, widowed, an incredibly disciplined man who had followed every piece of health advice he'd ever been given. "I steam broccoli every single night, Dr. Laura," he told me proudly. "I've been doing it for years. Prostate health, digestion, I've read all about it." He chuckled, but I could hear the undercurrent of concern. His nighttime urination had increased. His energy was inconsistent. His mental clarity had dulled. "I'm doing everything right," he said, looking at me sincerely. "So why am I still fading?" I asked him how he prepared the broccoli. "I steam it until it's soft," he said. "And sometimes I microwave it if I'm running late." That last sentence explained a great deal. Broccoli is one of the most powerful foods available for men over 60 specifically because of a compound called sulforaphane. This molecule is genuinely remarkable. It supports liver detoxification, reduces systemic inflammation, helps the body metabolize excess estrogen, and actively supports healthy testosterone balance. For an aging man, sulforaphane is close to nutritional gold. The problem is that sulforaphane is extraordinarily heat-sensitive. Overcooking broccoli, or microwaving it, destroys the majority of this compound. What remains is a soft, fiber-rich vegetable that is nutritionally much closer to filler than medicine. Walter had been faithfully eating broccoli for years, while inadvertently eliminating the one thing that made it worth eating. We made a single adjustment, lightly steaming for no more than 3 minutes or eating it raw dressed with olive oil and lemon. Within weeks, Walter's mental fog began to lift. His nighttime urination frequency decreased. His energy stabilized. Small changes, but for men over 60, small changes repeated consistently become the difference between decline and vitality. The truth is this: how you prepare vegetables matters as much as which vegetables you choose. Overcooking broccoli doesn't just reduce its flavor. It strips one of the most effective natural prostate protective compounds from your diet entirely. Now that we've covered what to pull back on, let's talk about what to add in. 4 vegetables that can restore your vitality. Arugula, natural vascular support. Tom was 71, a former Air Force mechanic, quiet and composed, but carrying something heavy. "I'm not looking for miracles," he told me in our first session. "I just want to feel like myself again." His diet was what I call beige: toast, pasta, meat. Almost no dark leafy greens, and certainly none that carry real vascular benefit. I introduced him to arugula. This peppery salad leaf is dense with naturally occurring nitrates that the body converts efficiently into nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is what physiologists call a vasodilatory signaling molecule. In plain language, it tells your blood vessels to relax and open up, allowing oxygen-rich blood to circulate freely throughout the body. That includes your legs, your brain, your heart, and the entire pelvic vascular network that governs a man's circulatory health and physical responsiveness. Unlike pharmaceutical interventions that force vasodilation through biochemical override, arugula works through your body's own enzymatic pathways. It supports what your vascular system is already designed to do. The downstream effects extend well beyond intimate wellness. Men who add arugula consistently report sharper cognitive function, warmer extremities, and sustained physical energy throughout the day. Tom started small: a handful on his eggs in the morning, a side salad at dinner. Within a week, he told me something had changed. His legs felt lighter. His thinking was clearer. And one morning, he noticed something he hadn't experienced in nearly 2 years that made him sit across from me with tears in his eyes. "Dr. Laura," he said, "it works. And I didn't need a pill." That is the quiet power of real food working with your biology rather than against it. Fresh or roasted red beets. Circulatory restoration. Carl was 67, a retired firefighter, solid and proud, but quietly struggling with something he found difficult to name. "I still love my wife," he told me, "but I don't feel the energy I used to. I don't feel like the man I was, and I think she senses it." Circulatory decline was the core issue. His extremities were cold in the mornings. His endurance was dropping. He had begun quietly withdrawing from intimacy, out of a sense of shame he'd never spoken aloud until that appointment. Most men don't connect these dots, but declining physical vitality almost always traces back to blood flow. And when circulation deteriorates, everything downstream suffers. That's when I talked to Carl about fresh, roasted red beets. Beets are one of the most concentrated sources of dietary nitrates available in whole food form. Once ingested, those nitrates convert to nitric oxide, which triggers vasodilation throughout the arterial network. Legs, heart, brain, and the entire pelvic circulatory system. The mechanism is similar to what pharmaceutical vasodilators target, but achieved through your body's own biochemical processes. Carl started roasting beets a few nights a week. Olive oil, sea salt, oven time. Within days, the coldness in his extremities improved. His walks became longer. His mental engagement sharpened. And one morning, leaning against my exam room counter, he said quietly, "She smiled at me last night the way she used to. That meant more to me than anything." This is what restored circulation does. It doesn't just change physical function, it restores dignity. One critical caveat: beets must be fresh or roasted to preserve their nitrate content. Canned or pickled beets, as we discussed, lose that benefit and introduce sodium levels that can actively counteract the effect. Real healing requires real food, prepared with real care. Cooked tomatoes. Prostate protection. Richard walked into my office at 74, silver-haired and well-dressed, but carrying a heaviness in his eyes that went beyond physical discomfort. The frequent nighttime urination was disrupting his sleep. The prostate pressure was affecting his confidence. "It's not just the physical part," he told me. "It's the constant worry. I just want to be her partner again, not her patient." Prostate inflammation, oxidative stress, and hormonal imbalance. This triad affects the majority of men over 60 in some degree, and it chips away quietly at confidence, energy, and relational intimacy. Most men don't know that one of the most clinically validated natural compounds for prostate protection is hiding in something most of them already eat: the tomato. The key is preparation. When tomatoes are cooked, they release lycopene in a bioavailable form, a carotenoid antioxidant with well-documented affinity for prostate tissue. Lycopene reduces oxidative damage, lowers inflammatory markers in the prostate, and has been associated in multiple clinical studies with reduced risk of prostate enlargement and prostate-related disease in aging men. I advised Richard to incorporate cooked tomatoes into his regular meals: homemade sauces, roasted tomatoes with olive oil, tomato-based soups. Olive oil is important. It significantly enhances lycopene absorption. Nothing complicated, just consistent. Within a few weeks, his nighttime urinary urgency decreased, his sleep improved, his energy returned in gradual increments. But what struck him most was his wife's observation. "You're laughing again," she told him. "You're not spending the whole evening near the bathroom." 2 to 3 servings of cooked tomato preparations per week, combined with a healthy fat like olive oil and herbs like garlic and basil, can make a meaningful cumulative difference. The prostate doesn't respond to dramatic interventions as well as it responds to steady, consistent nutritional support. Spinach, hormonal support and testosterone optimization. Leonard was 70, soft-spoken, 40-plus years married, deeply devoted to his wife, and yet he sat across from me and said something quietly devastating. "I'm still in love with her, but I don't feel like a man anymore. Not in my body, not in my mind. I feel faded." He wasn't critically ill. His medications were minimal. But he had every hallmark of testosterone deficiency: persistent fatigue, cognitive fog, reduced motivation, and an emotional distance from his partner that caused him more pain than any physical symptom. What Leonard's situation illustrates is something I explain to nearly every patient in his demographic. It's not just age, it's depletion. Years of chronic stress, processed food, inadequate micronutrient intake, and poor circulation drain the body of the raw materials it needs to produce and properly utilize testosterone. And one of the most effective, accessible, and overlooked interventions for this specific problem grows in every grocery store: spinach. Dark leafy spinach is exceptionally rich in magnesium, folate, and plant-based nitrates, three nutrients that work synergistically to support testosterone production, vasodilation, and neurological clarity. Magnesium specifically plays a direct role in freeing bound testosterone in the bloodstream. A significant proportion of testosterone in the male body is bound to proteins that render it biologically inactive. Adequate magnesium helps release that testosterone, making it available for the body to use. For men over 60, this mechanism alone can meaningfully shift the experience from fatigue to vitality. Leonard added a handful of steamed spinach to his breakfast or lunch daily. Within weeks, his mood lifted noticeably, his energy during the day improved, his walks became more purposeful, and one morning, his wife looked at him and said, "You're standing taller." That's not a side effect. That's what happens when you feed the body what it genuinely needs. Steamed, sautéed, or blended into a smoothie, spinach is one of the most practical, evidence-informed additions any man over 60 can make to his regular diet. The compound effects accumulate over time, and they show up not just in physical metrics, but in the quiet confidence a man carries through his days. What choosing the right vegetables actually looks like. When I look back across 13 years of working with men in the second half of their lives, the transformation I've witnessed has almost never come from a dramatic intervention. It's come from small, consistent, informed choices made at the most ordinary moment of every day: the dinner table. I've seen men like Robert remove soy from their diets and feel their hormonal energy return. Harold switch from canned beets to fresh ones and feel warmth in his legs again. Frank reduce his nightshade intake and feel sensation returning where there had been only numbness. And Walter adjust the way he steams his broccoli, just a small thing, and finally sleep through the night. These aren't miracles, they're adjustments. Quiet, steady, profoundly human changes that begin with information and follow through with choice. And then there are the men who added the right foods. Tom, who found vascular strength again in a handful of arugula. Carl, who roasted his way back to energy and emotional connection with his wife. Richard, who protected his prostate with cooked tomatoes and rediscovered his role as partner rather than patient. Leonard, who found his posture, his voice, and his pride in something as humble as daily spinach. Every one of these stories says the same thing: aging does not have to mean fading. The body at 60, 70, and 80 is still listening. It responds to what you feed it, not immediately, not dramatically, but consistently, reliably, and always with the potential for genuine restoration. Here is what I want you to take from this. What you avoid matters just as much as what you choose. Soy, pickled or canned beets, high alkaloid nightshades like eggplant, and overcooked cruciferous vegetables can quietly erode your hormonal balance, vascular health, and physical confidence. But arugula, fresh red beets, cooked tomatoes, and spinach can rebuild that foundation from the inside out. You have more agency over your health trajectory than you've been led to believe. No matter your age, it is not too late to choose vitality, one thoughtful meal at a time. In the next video, I'll be walking through how to combine these foods into a practical 7-day eating framework that supports circulation, hormonal health, and sustained physical confidence. Meals simple enough to make on any evening, effective enough to feel the difference within the first week. If this video was useful to you, please like, share, and leave a comment below. Your questions and feedback shape the direction of this channel and might be exactly what another man over 60 needs to hear to take his first step toward better health. And if you know someone who's been struggling with energy, confidence, or vitality, share this with them. It might do more for him than anything a prescription pad could offer.